I'm going to start this session with key basic questions that every Christian must answer. We have a lot of Christians that have made Christian more like Christianity, where they just go to church, come back the next Sunday, go to church, or Saturday, come back, just like that. They haven't really understood what Christianity really is and where it came from. I've come to believe and heard that Christianity was probably used to expand was probably used to expand slavery. Now, if you're a Christian, that should give you a question. Does that mean then that the Bible is not credible? Because if it is from God, how then would it be used to expand slavery? Those are questions that every Christian should ask. So these are the questions that you should answer. Number one, who started modern slavery? Number two, does the Bible encourage slavery? Number three, does the Bible contain slavery? Number four, was the Bible brought in Africa to expand slavery? I don't know why my camera is shifting, but I hope I'm audible and visible. So these are key questions that you should answer. Now, let me explain this. We know from the Bible, you guys I know these stories. We know that Adam sinned. Okay, Adam and Eve sinned. Why? Because they ate a fruit that was forbidden, because the serpent convinced the woman to eat. So Adam disobeyed God, and they were told to say, you work, you sweat, and all those things that came due to a covenant breach. Okay, so that's what happened. Now we know from then there are children. I don't know if Cain and Abel, who were also disobedient. In fact, one killed the other. Okay, then the descendants of Adam and Eve were really sinful. So God chose one person, Noah. He built an ark, and God promised that it will be that he would develop a nation through him. His descendant also sinned. In fact, what happened was Noah got drunk that to the extent that he became naked. The son saw his nakedness and kissed the son, and all those stories. Okay. From then, God then chose another person, Abraham, who he promised that you'll be father of all nations. Actually, God wanted to keep his covenant true, because he wanted to create man who would live on the earthly kingdom, a representative of the heaven kingdom. And if you see the promises of what these people are mentioning, you will find that God used to say, be fruitful, multiply, dominate, those things. Be fruitful, multiply, dominate, replenish the same promises that he gave to actually man in the first place, which is Adam and Eve. Same promises. So God wanted to choose a nation that will represent his original nature, that will reflect his culture, morals, principles, and obedience to those. That's why he had to choose different people along the way in order to fulfill the kingdom of heaven expansion to earth kingdom. So that's the story of the Bible. Okay. So we know Abraham then was told to settle in Canaan, but due to famine, they decided to go to Egypt, where they became slaves under the rule of Pharaoh. Moses was then appointed to free the Israelites. Then in Israel was ruled by a number of people. Okay, it started with prophets. Then we know the first king was Saul. Saul disobeyed God. Then David was appointed. From David, then we know Solomon. Solomon now was also became disobedient. He married a lot of wives. Some of them were pagans. So he began to worship pagans. And from the rule of Solomon, Israel had to disintegrate, separated into Judea, which is called Palestine, and Israel. So Israel split into Judea and Israel itself. Okay, so it was separated into two. And we know that Jesus was born in Judea. To be specific, it should be Bethlehem. Should be Bethlehem, yes. So now, In order to understand where really slavery came from and its expansion or the ideology of slavery, we have to understand the story of ancient Greece and the Roman Empire. Because Roman Empire is simply expansion of Greek thinking. So even when the Roman had to disintegrate, it was simply the disintegration of Greek thinking. So they disintegrated, but Greek thinking was still there. Okay. So now let's say Greece had city states. Okay, but two of the significant ones was Sparta and Athens. Now these two cities were different in nature. Spartans were military centered, while Athens were rhetoric centered. Rhetoric meaning good at speaking, they were thinkers. Then Spartans killed babies that were unfit for training, while Athens were more involved with logic. Actually, these things in public speaking, where you say logic, ethos, pathos, those were Greek thinkings who came up with that, specifically the city of Athens. Okay, so Spartans actually didn't allow women to own property because they believed that immediately a male was born, at a certain age, they have to go for military. Actually, Spartans believed that if a male dies in war, he has fulfilled this purpose. They believed that males were born to die for Sparta. So death was normal. Actually, they would celebrate if you die in war as a man. That's how Sparta was. It was military centered. Okay. Now, unlike Sparta, Athens were more of, they had prejudice against women. So only males were allowed to participate in political decisions, and that's why they taught logic. Okay, they were political, and this is where things like politics come from. They taught politics. Okay, how do you argue logically? Logos. How do you argue logically? Okay, so that was Athens. Now, the unthinkable thing happened. The unthinkable thing happened. What happened was a city called Persia. It invaded a city called Miletus. Miletus was a city-state in Greece. So it was small and was overpowered by Persia. So now they had to ask for help from other city-states. Now what happened is Sparta refused. Only Athens came for their help. Okay. And this war happened at Plains of Marathon, which was 26.2 miles foot race from Athens. And until today, this is why we say marathon is 26.2. Those are Greek histories. So marathon is not, didn't start now. It is an adopted word. It is an adopted thing because after the Athens defeated the Persia, after the Athens defeated Persia, they sent a messenger to go back to Athens and say that we have won the victory, and they had to run 26.2 miles to take the message. That is why today we say marathon. I don't know if it's exactly the same figure, which is 26.2, but that's where marathon comes from. It was from Greek, the Greek war. It was Athens against Persian. The Persian war. You read this, search, you find them. Okay? So now, after the war, Athens began now to dominate other city states, not as fighting, but as a way to collaborate in terms of thinking. They began to follow their thinking and thought because they realized that they are powerful in thinking. Okay, so other states started to be on the side of Athens. Now this threatened Sparta. So this led now to what is called the Peloponnesian War. Difficult word. Peloponnesian War. It was a war against Athens and Sparta now. To say these are now thinkers, they are getting support from other city states. We have to destroy them. And you know, Sparta was military centered, and that is how Athens was destroyed by Sparta. So the Peloponnesian War was simply a war against the two Greek city-states, which is Athens and Sparta. Now watch this. After the war ended, what three philosophers that rose in Athens? Actually two, because the other one wasn't from Athens. Two Greek philosophers. Number one, Socrates. He was born in Athens. Number two, Plato, who was a student of Athens. Who was a student of Socrates. He was also born in Athens. Okay. Then we also had Plato, who was a student. Aristotle, who was a student of Plato. Now, Plato came from a city called Macedonia. Okay. Macedonia. Okay. That's a city-state that Aristotle came from. It was actually a city north of Greece. Yeah, something like that. Okay. Now, Aristotle was a thinker, and some of the things he was thinking about, some of them we mention them nowadays. For example, he studied leadership, and according to him, he said that leaders were born. Leaders are born, not made. Okay. Now, this is a very good statement because we understand that actually, we are all born leaders because God wanted us to dominate. That was a original design of God for creating Adam and Eve, which is to dominate or rule. So therefore, since we are descendants of Adam and Eve, it means we are all born leaders. But the thinking is under what Aristotle thought about leadership is what is really bothering and depressing actually. It shocked me to understand how he was thinking. So leaders were born, not made. Okay. And the other thing about Aristotle is he believed in slavery. In other words, he believed that others were born to lead while others were born to be slaves. Okay. He did not believe in gender equality. Okay. He believed women cannot be equal to men. He believed that there are certain birth traits that can show leadership. In other words, when you are born, he said you can tell that this one will be a leader and this one will be a slave. Now, some of the birth traits that Aristotle did put across, and if you read, go to the book to say the great man theory, it emanated from Aristotle. And the birth traits that Aristotle put across on leadership, some of them include that if you are born with sharp-pointed nose, blue eyes, fair skin, and thin lips, then you are automatically a leader. This concept led to the Great Mind Theory, and Great Mind Theory is a book that from where leadership started developing. Now, from the Great Mind Theory, it now went to trait theory, where people now say honesty and these things because people began to ridicule that thinking. Okay, but that is what Aristotle studied on leadership. Birth traits were included: sharp-pointed nose, blue eyes, fair skin, and thin lips. If you are this, you automatically what? Now watch this. This is very interesting. Now, from Aristotle, we know Aristotle was a student of Plato. Okay. Then Aristotle also had a student called Alexander the Great. Okay. Now Alexander was also from Macedonia, which was the same city-state as Aristotle. Now Alexander was simply a prince. Okay, so he became a king after the death of his father Alexander. Okay, after his father Alexander. Okay, after the death of his father, of his father Charles II, Alexander the Great now became king. A very young boy, he became king. Then he began to expand. He actually expanded to a point that he killed the enemies. He defeated the enemies of of Greece, which was Persia, destroyed it, and also invaded the entire invaded Greece, the entire Greece. And this led to what is called the Hellenistic period. The Hellenistic period is simply a period of Greek thinking and culture. It is simply a period of Greek thinking and culture. Now, this period meant that Alexander the Great and all the people he expanded to began to think that leaders were born, not made. If you had sharp pointed nose, blue eyes, fair skin, thin lips, you are simply who? A leader. Now watch this. After Alexander expanding, he now died at the age of 33. Very young age. But look at what he did. Today is remembered Alexander the Great. He's actually believed to be one of the greatest kings to ever exist. Okay? Now, after Alexander died, there was now the rise of the Roman Empire. Now, it is believed that Rome was founded by two boys, which is Romulus and Remus. Difficult words. Now, according to history, it was believed that these boys were thrown in a river and they were being taken care by a wolf. Then, after they grew up, they then founded the name. They then founded a city named Rome, which we don't know if it's true or not. Okay, but you can expand more to understand where Rome emanated from. But what we know that there was a Roman Empire. Now, there was a person called Julius Caesar, emperor of the Roman Empire. This guy was a dictator. Okay, he began to expand, invaded Greece. Okay, invaded Greece. He ruled from North Africa to most of Europe. Okay, that's how deep he went into expanding. He was very strong. Now, funny thing happened. When Julius Caesar, or rather when the Roman Empire expanded to Greece, they found a library that was founded by Alexander the Great. It was called the Alexandria Library. This was a library where simply Greeks would think and document books. A very big library. Okay? It was in Italy. So now, when the Roman Empire reached there, Julius Caesar commanded to say, don't destroy this library. And people began to read Greek philosophy. So in other words, the Roman Empire also adopted Greek thinking. Okay? It was a different kingdom, but with Greek thinking. Okay? And thinkers will always rule doers. Okay? Now, watch this. We are now going to understanding now where this slavery comes from. Okay? Let us now look at the Roman Empire and Christianity. Jesus was born in Judea. At that time, Judea was being ruled by Roman Empire. And that is why when you find in the Bible, there are statements that Jesus said, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Jesus was born in the Roman Empire, and Caesar is a title. I think at that time it was Augustus Caesar was ruling because Judas was killed, was betrayed by his people. So Caesar is a title, simply means son of the gods. And that is why Jesus was really in problems with basically the Jews and the Roman Empire itself. Why? Because they believed only the emperor of Rome was son of the gods. But Jesus comes to say that I am the son of God. I've been sent by my father. Now, you understand what really was going through. It was very tough for Jesus to convince because Judas Caesar, Augustus Caesar saw himself as a son of God. Okay? Now, watch this. As I've said, Jesus was born in Judea under the rule of Roman Empire. This is why we see sayings such as give Caesar what belongs to Caesar. After ruling for a long time, the Roman Empire fell by disintegration. Now it is there are a lot of myths to say that the Roman Empire fell because of recession and these others, but it fell by disintegration. By disintegration, it simply means that it fell because the Caesars became homosexuals. That is what led to the fall of simply the Roman Empire. Now, when the Roman Empire fell by disintegration, it simply means that the Greek thinking was simply separated, and this is where we saw city-states such as Franco. The word sounds familiar, which is France. Spain, which is Spain, and all those city-states. Those are simply city-states of Greek thinking, because Rome adopted the Greek thinking and culture. Okay? Now, Rome fell at a point where Christianity was expanding. So basically, when Jesus was born, it was in a culture of slavery. It was basically in a culture of slavery where slavery was normal. And that is why even in the writings of Paul, you find that he would advise slaves to obey their master, because that was a culture. It is not necessarily that they encouraged slavery, but it was a culture that they found. Jesus found that culture of slaves. You've understood from the thinking of Aristotle that they believed in slaves. There is different perception on leaders. Pointed nose, fair eyes, thin lips, then you're a leader. Okay? You understand? So now, basically, to read on where Paul maybe wrote to about slaves, encouraging them to respect their master, you find it in Ephesians 6. But even that statement didn't mean that Paul was encouraging slaves. He was simply saying obey the masters, just to bring a culture where both slaves and masters would have mutual respect, because that was not the culture. Slaves were being oppressed. So he decided to bring that uniformity. Actually, he says that to the Lord there is no favoritism. If you read the entire Ephesians, you find that. So that is why the Bible contains slavery. Not that it advised slavery. That was a culture that was there. Jesus found that Judea actually was being ruled by Rome. Now, we understand that after Rome disintegrated, Greek thinking didn't leave the mind of those states that disintegrated. For example, Franco, France, Espanol, and these other countries, England and all those, Britain and all those. So now, after Rome disintegrated, now Christianity was at its peak. Okay, evangelism was at its peak. For example, Paul would go to cities preaching. And this is where we see missionaries now going to expand Christianity. Now, when these missionaries were coming to Africa, their intention was Christianity, pure intentions. Okay, but not forgetting that where they were coming from, leaders and the minds of people were simply different on who leaders and slaves are. Okay, the mind of who a follower and a leader was totally different. So when they came to Africa and went back to where they were coming from, description of the people they found: they didn't have pointed nose, they didn't have thin lips, they didn't have blue eyes, they didn't have fair skin. So in the mind of the colonizer, who have we found? We found followers, we found slaves. And this is why even colonization, according to them, it wasn't something bad, it was normal. Because from the Greek thinking, a slave simply shouldn't have those characteristics. Okay? If you don't have a pointed nose, you don't have thin lips, you don't have fair eyes, you don't have blue eyes, you're automatically a slave. And basically, this is a picture that they had on Africans. So this is where colonization or slavery came from. They found workers in Africa because of Greek thinking and philosophy. I hope this is understood. I just thought of putting this across so that we understand and basically disassociate the Bible from the concept of expansion of colonization. The Bible has never and Jesus has never supported slavery. It was a culture that the environment was in. It was a culture that even Jesus himself found. It was a culture that Paul found due to Roman expansion to other city states and other countries or nations. So basically, colonization was a result of Greek thinking or expansion of Greek thinking. They found slaves, they found workers in Africa. And this is why today I might not know, I don't have facts to defend that, but basically this still exists. In the eyes of the colonizer, when you're educated, you are simply an educated slave. Why? You don't have a pointed nose, you don't have blue eyes, you don't have fair skin, you don't have blonde hair. I mean, you don't have you don't have fair skin, you don't have blue eyes, you don't have thin lips. So that's basically it. I hope you guys enjoy. Go further and study this, and you understand that basically it was actually Christianity that wanted to bring a mutual relationship between slaves and slave owners. Thank you once again, and see you on the next one. Peace.